Hello, I'm Mark Tucker.
Hey there, I'm Alan Furstenberg. Welcome to Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Hey, Alan.
Hey, Mark. How are things been?
Oh, it's been good generally. I'm excited. A couple of weeks, Alexa Live is happening.
Alexa Live is coming up. We're coming up on our 100th episode.
I know. That is so cool.
It's
Congratulations early.
I know it's amazing and surprising. And we're recording this just before Voice Global, and all sorts of stuff is going on. So it's always exciting. It seemed for a while that things had quieted down when it came to voice, and it seems like stuff is happening again.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of fun. I like seeing that. I like seeing when the new version of something comes out and kind of checking out, see what's going on, which is something that's happened this week,
right?
With Alexa presentation language.
Yeah, no, the latest version is out, and well, why don't you quickly review and remind people what Alexa presentation language APL is, and then we'll start talking about some of the changes.
Okay, so for Alexa, you have screen devices, smart displays, and the language that you use to create those screens is called Alexa presentation language. And like if we were to do kind of like parallel between like web programming and Alexa smart display, then APL is kind of like HTML. It's got the ability to do structure. You can do components. You can do kind of like styles and stuff, like kind of like CSS. It's all completely different. It's definitely not web, but it kind of accomplishes the same purpose. And the underlying structure of that is JSON.
Yeah. So you say it's HTML, and I kind of think of it as it's an interesting mix of HTML and CSS, and it's not really JavaScript, but it's got kind of built-in stuff from JavaScript.
Yeah, it's got some built-in functions. It's got the ability to do data binding, so you can separate your data from the presentation.
And it's got events. It's got
commands,
it's got some,
events.
Right.
Yeah.
It's got things so that stuff can happen on the video side without constantly having to go back to the server.
Yeah. So you can do text and images and video and vector graphics
and audio
animation
with APLA and
yep. So you get to do all kinds of stuff with it, and it's a little bit takes a little bit of getting used to, because it's not like something you've seen before. It's something that was custom built for Alexa.
Okay.
So that's kind of an overview of Alexa presentation language. We've talked about it before. It's just a great way to add additional functionality. Could be interactivity, either via voice or touch, to augment your skill, whether it be a game or some sort of a utility or quiz or whatever.
And the widget functionality for the Show 15 and presumably for other ones looks like it's built on top of APL as well, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So you can do individual widgets. It's not something it's been announced in the past. It's not something that's generally available. Maybe that will be something that will be generally available in a couple of weeks. I'm hoping that's actually something that's on my wish list that hopefully will come out.
So interestingly, they announced this new version before Alexa Live. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
They did. So the first thing that's going to be interesting is the versioning. So in the past, or the most recent version of APL before this release that came out this week, was version 1.9. Now, APL itself, like the language, has a version, and that's 1.9. And then there's also, you can group components together into like bigger components that are reusable. And there are libraries of components or templates that APL gives you, and they have their own versioning numbers and you can import those in. But we're talking about like the general language itself. And so when you specify an APL document, which is kind of the root structure where everything lives for a particular screen in APL, then you have to give what the version number is. So the first thing that's to note is that there's a naming change. So instead of going 1.9, the next version is 2022.1.
Of course, that makes total sense.
Yeah, so they're switching. We'll have APL 95 and millennial ME. I don't know. I don't know. They're
APLNT.
Oh yeah. The new technology of the no, it's not. I don't know. It hasn't gone the crazy path that Windows OS naming has, but who knows, right?
Well, it probably did do so though for much the same reasons that if that people who were parsing the APL version number, suddenly does that mean that version 1.10 is the same as version 1.1? Does it parse before 1.2? Is it numerically after 1.9? So you can kind of see where it suddenly got ambiguous.
Yeah.
And they made it unambiguous.
That's true. And it is kind of interesting. So the idea going forward is that they haven't said how many releases a year there will have or they anticipate of APL, but the first release of the year will be the year .1. The second release during the year will be .2, .3. So you'll at least you have some sort of reference like when this came out. Now,
yeah.
The things that are included in this most recent version of APL doesn't necessarily seem like they're major changes under the hood. So I don't know, or at least from the developer's perspective, maybe something's changed significantly under the hood. I don't know. So I don't know if the version number is to reflect kind of the code base behind the scenes, and maybe some big things changed and they ported, but the functionality is kind of the same, or not sure exactly why the number changed, but it shouldn't really affect. Otherwise, just as you're creating new documents, you'll just use this new version number.
Okay, so it's been a while since we actually talked about the APL. I don't remember which one we actually last covered. What are some of the changes that we've seen recently? The bigger changes, at least, that we've seen recently.
One change that they've made, which is just really a small change, there's been the ability to have video inside of a screen, and you can create your own player controls and pause and start and change the scrub to the certain position inside of the video and stuff like that. But there's a new dynamic property that they've added called mute. So that allows you to mute the audio. So I haven't really tried this, but yet I haven't had a chance. But what it seems like is that you could be playing the video and then mute it, and the video would still continue to play, but then the audio wouldn't play. And there's, you can get events that tell you like that, whether it's muted or not muted. And then you can, since the property is dynamic, it means that you can change it as it's happening.
Okay, that all makes sense.
Yeah.
Again, it's related to the fact that you can now hook it up to other events that you're working on and be able to mute it through those other events.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Different things could happen. I haven't really thought of a case where I would use that yet, but apparently the use case came up someplace. So that's available now. The other thing I want to talk about is Lottie files.
Okay. What are Lottie files? Because I'll be honest, I have never, I think I heard them the first time we talked about this with APL. And I don't think I've run into them since. So remind me what Lottie files are again.
All right. I would have to look on the website to see how old Lottie files are. It might only be 4, maybe 5 years. I'm not sure. But Lottie files you'll see in the web, and it's all about animation. And I guess it doesn't have to be just the web, but I'll go back and I'll kind of give you my understanding of Lottie files. You can definitely deep dive into them a lot more. But the idea is that you have vector graphics and you want to be able to do animations. And so SVG, scalable vector graphic format, is XML based. Lottie files are JSON based. So what they've done is taken the structure of XML and somehow converted it to JSON, not necessarily unlike how Alexa vector graphics, in order to get SVGs into APL screens, you have to convert the SVG in XML format into AVG, Alexa vector graphic format, which is JSON. Now the structure for Lottie files JSON and Alexa vector graphics JSON are different.
Of course.
But it's kind of the same thing. You could have layers, you can have paths, you can have, set properties like color, but you can also define animations. So you can like your designer could use Adobe After Effects and create an animation and then export that as a Lottie file. Or you could go to a website called Lottie Files, and there are like a community of Lottie files, and you can see what they look like. You can see the animations. To a certain extent, you can go in and kind of tweak, like how fast does the animation play, or in some cases, you can like change the colors or different things like that. So there are some customization, fairly easy customization to do, but kind of the combination of the SVG structure plus the animation instructions is all contained in a single JSON file, and that is a Lottie file.
Okay, I guess that makes some sense.
So then, because there's a number of different players that have come in and played, added stuff to it, and then lots of different open source providers, so you can show a Lottie file on the web. You can show a Lottie file on mobile, whether that's Android or iOS. You could, in desktop, different frameworks have players or whatever, Lottie file players that you can then play Lottie files lots of different places. So what's happened in the APL world is there is a tool that will convert a Lottie file into Alexa vector graphic. And so in the end, you have APL, and you'll have the same type of components. Like there is a vector graphic component, and then there is a section in APL where you define your graphics, and that will use its own format for defining what are the layers and the paths and the text and what colors and stuff. And then you can animate it. And there's a kind of like on the web, there's a number of different ways that you could animate something on the web. You could use CSS for animations. And in fact, there's a tool that you could take CSS animations and then convert them into animations, or more like easing functions that can be used in animations. And there's a animate item event that you can use. And so there's a couple of different ways that you can do animations in APL. And there's, if you've got a dynamic property, you can animate it. It can be some of the built-in components of APL, like a text component or a frame component. So you're not necessarily constrained on what you can animate in APL. But when it comes to the implementation of Lottie, then Lottie files are imported as Alexa vector graphics. And so then you're actually animating different parts of the AVG, which is a little bit different. And kind of the way that you do it is a little bit different too, as opposed to setting like easing function properties and things like that. Then there is a a property that the system APL itself makes available called elapsed time. And so you can actually bind to that elapsed time, and it will, every time that there's a change, I don't know how frequently it does it, but the elapsed time just keeps increasing, blah, 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 blah. So you can create a resource, which in APL is a resource, could be colors, it could be numbers, for like dimensions of screens, it could be almost anything. There is a type of resource in APL called an easing function, which
you can,
the single input could be time that's based off of this elapsed time. And you could say at different points in time, then is it a curve? Is it a line? Is it a
so you're defining the function about how to process time and how far along the animation it needs to be at each part of the time. Okay.
And then you can use that easing function at different things, like for translate or for things that you would typically animate. It could be size, it could be whatever. So it's a little bit different functionality and a way to do that. But that's kind of under the scenes, that's the functionality. So Lottie files were introduced in APL back in version 1.6.
Okay.
And I guess it's important to note that Alexa's Alexa vector graphic AVG structure is really a subset of functionality that's available in SVG. So, and because SVGs are converted into Lottie files, then there's a certain number of functionality that Lottie files have, and AVGs are lagging that as well.
Okay.
So when it first came out in 1.6, there was certain things like, and generally still I think is the case, that you want to pick simpler Lottie files to use in AVG. And as part of the conversion process, then it could identify that certain things didn't convert over, and it may not work. It's just depends. So
if the feature is not supported, there's nothing it can do about it.
Yeah, exactly. And there's like there's a subset. So I think there's only certain types of gradients that AVGs support, whereas Lottie files support a bigger array of gradient possibilities. Okay. And so if the Lottie file is based off of a different type of gradient that AVG supports, then it's not going to support it. And so this is like the third release. I can't remember. I think 1.9, there was some additional functionality for Lottie files that were added. And here in this 2022.1 version, it's added some more. So Bezier interpolation, linear interpolation, alpha masks, some radial and stroke gradient stuff. Okay. So, your mileage may vary based on what you're trying to do with Lottie, but it is a really convenient way for a designer or somebody that has skills with animation to create something and just hand that off to be used, as opposed to us as developers, which we used to have to do, which was try to match it. And we had to be an expert on how to translate a design that had an animation into how do you code that animation. Yeah. But it's getting easier so that you don't necessarily have to do that.
Well, and again, it's useful to have these tools first it's useful to have these tools that do the animation. So you can just say, that's the one I want, tweak it with these parameters.
Right.
Animate it faster, or, instead of blue, I want red. And then to also have tools to take this standard format and put it in to make developing APL easier for designers who may not be used to APL at this point.
Exactly. And that's also kind of something that's changing as well. And I'm hopeful that the actual converter from Lottie files to AVGs will actually be open sourced at some point in the future. It currently isn't. So, I'm a big fan of APL Ninja. I use that for designing my APL screens. But there isn't currently an importer or converter from Lottie files to AVG. And that's not something that Alexa's open sourced yet. So that their team, in order to get a Lottie file converted AVG into my screen on APL Ninja, I actually have to go to the tool that Amazon provides inside of the Alexa Developer Console and create a new visual component, at which point I can import a Lottie file and it will do the conversion. And then now I have a tool that in some ways is similar to APL Ninja, and I can then take the whole JSON code section of my APL document, and I can copy and paste that into
the document
APL
on
Ninja,
APL Ninja.
and then I've got it in there. But that's even kind of a challenge in the fact that Amazon controls the release of different APL versions, what's called view hosts. So Amazon's created a view host for the web. So it's an APL component that basically says, here's APL, which could include an AVG. And it's a renderer of APL inside of a browser.
Okay. So the web renderer for APL is controlled by Amazon, and they don't necessarily release it when they release a new APL version.
Exactly. So like APL Ninja right now is on version 1.9, because the view host for APL on the web was just released, or at least the most recent code commit, it was 4 days ago. So there's kind of a lag between.
Is that before or after 22.1 or 2022?
It does include 22.1. In fact, the package.json has the version number of APL view host web as 2022.1.0.
Okay.
So it does have it in there,
so
but
it does have it. It's just that APL Ninja hasn't had a chance to incorporate it yet.
To consume that and do a new push out to their website with the latest version.
Okay.
Wow. I don't know. Was that complicated? Because it seemed a little complicated.
It seems more complicated than it should be. Is there anything else that's new in 2022.1? Just saying 2022.1 is complicated.
2022.1, yeah, it is. Nope, no, that was those video mute and additional support for Lottie.
So I mean, it's great to see additional features rolling out. That's always a good thing.
Yeah, and I'm not really an animator, and I don't have Adobe After Effects, and it would take sometimes I feel like, and that's probably good, that tools that designers use or that Adobe would create for their customers, it twists my head around. It's not necessarily the way I would think about things, or it just takes. So I would love another tool that's more open source that I could create it. So for I like maybe I don't know, Inkscape has some sort of animation feature that allows you to export to Lottie files. I don't know. That would be something that would be cool or interesting, or even just a very basic. Like here is an SVG, and here's the different parts, and I can animate different parts, and even give me like a timeline that I can scrub to different keyframes and things, and then the output of that would be a Lottie file. But it would be cool to see like two voice stabs where part of the logo comes in and another part comes up, or an animation like that as a Lottie file. So if somebody out there in the world wants to do that, it would take me a long time to try to figure that out.
Talk to us, because we've got some animation things we'd love to do. So if you know how to do it, feel free to talk to us. Or if you've got other thoughts on this new APL version, or what's still missing from APL, what you'd like to see, or how you would use them, we'd love to hear from you. As always, find us on Twitter, LinkedIn, comments below. Reach out to us. You know how to find us at this point, I hope. Any other thoughts, Mark?
Nope, that was just a lot to go over.
Uh,
2 voice devs. Take care, everybody.
2 voice devs. See you next week for our 100th episode.
100.
Take care, everyone.